My name is Ryan Foster. I am the Program Officer for the Refugee Career Pathways Program at the Office of Refugee Resettlement. As a reminder, today's webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available on ORR's website following this presentation. This webinar is limited to clarification of information that can be found in the funding announcement for the Refugee Career Pathways Program, which is available on grants.gov. ORR is not able to provide any information that is not already found in the funding announcement document. We are limited to emphasizing or making sure that all information in the NOFO is clearly understood, to respond to any questions you might have about where to find certain information in the NOFO, but we are not able to provide any additional information or technical assistance or respond to any specific questions around activities that you might propose in your program, or how information that you include in your application might be evaluated during the review process. At the conclusion of my presentation, we will have a period for questions. As a reminder, though, we are limited to providing answers with information that can already be found in the funding announcement or in the program guidelines linked to in the funding announcement. During the question session, after you may either come off mute to ask your question or use the chat. Please allow me a few seconds after we get to each question for me to locate the section of the NOFO where we can find the relevant information. This funding opportunity is open to all public and private nonprofit organizations. Individuals, including sole proprietorships or foreign entities, may not apply for this application. So any organization that has nonprofit status is eligible to apply for this funding announcement. In order to apply, you must have an active account with sam.gov. That sam.gov will provide you with a unique entity identifier, and this process can take several weeks. So if you're considering applying, please begin this process right away if you haven't already. If you don't have a unique entity identifier, you will not be able to submit an application, and generally failure to have applied in advance for this identifier is not accepted as a reason why a late application can be accepted. You also must have an active account with grants.gov in order to access all of the information related to this funding announcement and to apply. If you don't have an active grants.gov account and you are not fully logged into grants.gov, you may find that you are unable to access information regarding this funding announcement. The maximum award for the first budget period is $325,000, and the funding period is 36 months of performance with 3 12-month budget periods. This means that this $325,000 amount refers to the amount that you may apply for that would cover the first year of funding. You would then be eligible to apply, if awarded, for a second and third year of funding on a non-competitive basis. You can see on this slide where you can find the program guidelines that are referred to in the funding announcement. This covers all guidelines, allowable activities, and additional information about what you would be required to do and what is and is not allowed through the program should you be awarded. Please make sure that you fully review these guidelines, as the information will be important when putting together your application. And this is available on ORR's website. There is no account or special access needed to find these and review these guidelines. You may notice in the funding announcement that there is a required partnership referred to throughout the application. This refers to a partnership with at least one educational institution, which could include a university, a college, a community college, or another institution that is focused on career and technical education. If you, the applicant, are an institution specifically focused on education, then to fulfill this required partnership, you must instead include a partnership with at least one organization that provides services to refugees. This is not required to be a refugee resettlement agency. It must be an organization that does have experience and is providing services to refugees. In your application, you are required to provide a letter of support from a required partner. If you do not provide a letter of support from a required partner, your application may be disqualified. An educational institution that focuses only on support to one specific career field does not satisfy this requirement. ACF has instituted a 2-file limit to electronically submitted applications. This means that you must submit no more than 2 files as part of your application. One file would include your program narrative. The other would include appendices and other supplemental information. Other forms that you are required to submit that are standard forms with a listed OMB control number, such as the SF424 application for federal assistance, may appear as a separate attachment in your application package. This will not count towards the 2-file limit. The 2-file limit refers to the information that you put together as part of your application: the program narrative, the budget, and the supporting documents. If you submit more than 2 files, the additional files may be removed from your application package for review, meaning that the individuals who review and score your application will not see the information that is in those additional files. So please be certain that you are submitting no more than 2 files with your application. The first file should include the table of contents, a 1-page project summary, your project narrative, and your line item budget and budget narrative. The second should include other required supporting documents, such as your proof of nonprofit status, your indirect cost agreement, the letter from your required partner, supporting information about your organizational capacity, any third-party agreements you may have in place, letters of support, maintenance of effort certification, and any other supporting documents. The page limit for your application for this funding announcement is 80 pages, which includes pages from your first and second file. So it does include supporting documents. It does not include government standard forms with an OMB control number. If you submit more than 80 total pages, then excess pages will be removed from your application for review and will not be seen by the reviewers. You must submit your application through grants.gov unless we provide an exemption for a paper submission, which are only provided in very limited circumstances. Applications are due by June 28th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, and you must apply through grants.gov. If your application is late, then it will not be accepted for review. So we encourage you not to wait until the very last minute to begin the process of submitting your application. If you experience a technical issue with grants.gov during the application period, Then visit grants.gov/support or call the grants.gov support center at 1-800-518-4726. ORR is not able to provide technical assistance with grants.gov. If a technical issue prevents you from submitting your application on time, there is a policy document for applicants experiencing federal systems issues, which can be found at hhs.gov, and the link appears in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. If you are successful, we will email or transmit through our grant system a notice of award to your authorized official. So please take note that when you provide an email address for your authorized official, make sure that this is an email address that is monitored, or else you may miss information about the status of your application. We will also send an email to this address if your application is disqualified or unsuccessful. For additional information, please contact or please visit ORR's website at acf.hhs.gov/ORR. You can use the QR code on the screen to visit the grants page of our website. You are welcome to contact me with questions at ryan.foster@acf.hhs.gov. I'll now turn to questions. I'll start with the questions that are in the chat. You're welcome to add additional questions if you like, or you may raise your hand and I will call on you in turn. Should we submit a budget for 1 year? Yes, according to the instructions in the budget section, you should submit a budget for the first year of the program period. If you have an institution that does education training apprenticeships for electricians, pipe fitting, and HVAC, is that all considered one field? I'm not able to provide any clarification in addition to what is in the funding announcement. We have an existing workforce development program, which is WIOA funded. That's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act through the state of Tennessee. Are we able to refer RCP participants to this WIOA existing internal program of ours? I'm not able to provide comments on any specific activities that you are considering for your application. You will have to carefully read the funding announcement and use your best judgment. Would community-based literacy organizations that offer English as a second language classes to immigrants and refugees be considered an educational institution or an organization providing direct support to refugees? It may possibly qualify as either. You would have to use your best judgment according to the information that is found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. A similar question: if an institution is both a refugee resettlement agency as well as an educational institution, is there an additional partnership required? An institution qualifying as one type of organization does not mean that it could not potentially be considered another if it focuses on education and also provides services to refugees. Regarding outcome, how much lateral movement do refugees have for job advancement? Do they have to stay at the same company? Do they have to stay in the same industry? I would encourage you to fully review the activities section of the funding announcement to see if what you are proposing regarding outcomes is addressed in the NOFO. And if it is not directly addressed, then there is no particular requirement or restriction. For the required partner, do we need to get an agreement signed in addition to the letter of support? The NOFO only requires a letter of support be submitted as part of your application to be accepted. What is the minimum and maximum number of participants to be served in the first year? This information is not addressed in the funding announcement. How are minors referred to the program? There is no restriction in the program. There is no particular age limit for services for the program. Is a support letter or email required from the state refugee coordinator? The funding announcement does require consultation with the state refugee coordinator, and that you provide evidence of this consultation as part of your application package. It does not require a letter of support. It does not require that this evidence be in the form of a formal letter. It just requires evidence that you have consulted with your state refugee coordinator. If you're not familiar with who your state refugee coordinator is, information about how to find out where that office is located and who you should contact can be found in the funding announcement. An acronym list was not mentioned in the application components. Can we include an acronym list? Will this be included in the page count? You can include any information you think would be helpful to ORR and to those who would review your application. Any information you do include that is not a required government form with an OMB control number will count towards the page limit. If the start date is September 30th, 2024, the end date is September 29th, 2025. Is that correct? The start date is September 30th, 2024. September 29th, 2025 will be the end date for the first budget period. However, the end date for the full 3-year program period would be September 29th, 2027. I believe I already addressed the question about doing training for different fields. The budget request ceiling for $325,000, that refers to the budget request for the first year only. That's the limit for the first year, $325,000. We are an ethnic self-help organization primarily serving Ukrainian refugees. We do have partnership with other local agencies serving other refugees. Can we apply for just our population, or do we need to provide services to all groups in our state? Per the funding announcement, you must, those who are awarded through this program must provide services to all eligible individuals, regardless of national origin. On page 15, it states participants can receive $12,000 over the 3-year program. This means total, correct, not 12,000 years per year. Yes, $12,000 total over the 3-year program period. Does the training and educational component need to be in more than one field? For example, more that only career paths for various roles, but all in healthcare? Not entirely sure of the question, but I believe it's asking if you need to provide support for more than one field. I would encourage you to review the full NOFO and the required activities. The NOFO asks applicants to explain your plan for identifying and enrolling participants who can best benefit from the program. At the same time, it's not clear that applicants are not permitted to develop criteria to determine whether an eligible individual is actually suitable for the program. Is it the case that anyone eligible to be enrolled must be enrolled? The funding announcement does not state that you must enroll all individuals who are eligible, just that you must not discriminate or limit program services based on things like national origin, gender, etc. Can the funds help individuals who do not have a high school diploma? The NOFO does not state any minimum education requirements for participation in the program. I didn't see a length limit for the project narrative. There is no specific required length for the program narrative, just an overall page limit for the full application. If an agency was selected for funding, does this mean the agency would be awarded $325,000 in the first year and then would be invited to apply for another $325,000 for the second year? It does mean that the intention would be that ORR would invite you to apply for funding in the second and third years. However, this and the amount you would be invited to apply for is dependent on ORR's overall funding available. So I can't say for certain that you would be invited to apply for another $325,000. How many letters of support are required? Letters of support are not required, but you are welcome to submit any that you may receive. If indirect cost is less than 10%, what documentation is required? I'm not sure if perhaps you mean more than 10% is, but if it's You are welcome to request less than 10% of indirect cost if you choose. If you are requesting more than 10%, you must include a indirect cost rate agreement from a cognizant federal agency. The response to what minimum maximum number of participants to be served, there is no minimum or maximum number that is not included as part of the funding announcement. Can organizations budget for the 15% de minimis rate in light of the changes to the CFR next fiscal year? I am not able to respond to questions about changes in the CFR. That is not my area of expertise. Will these questions and answers be made available to the public? Yes, the recording of this meeting will be available on ORR's website shortly following this presentation. If the budget request ceiling for the first year is $325,000, does this also include the staff career coach's salary that will provide the services? Yes, it includes everything that you're requesting. Can the $12,000 be used for childcare costs? Childcare during training is stated as one of the costs where you may use the direct financial assistance. Can tuition be covered apart from the $12,000 in supporting costs per participant? This is the limit on spending per individual. So in something like tuition, no, you would not be able to spend more than $12,000 because that's going to a particular individual. The $4,000 assistance support, I think you mean the $12,000. It's not per year, it's 12,000 total. The limit for all financial support to participants, no, it's per participant. So you may use up to $12,000 on each enrolled participant over the 3 years. Are grants available for a healthcare career development program just being implemented with budget levels just being determined? Refugee participants have been identified in multiple health provider partners. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. You'll have to clarify. The NOFO states provide monthly or quarterly quantitative projections for what you plan to accomplish and when. Does accomplishments mean indicator targets or something else? If no, does it mean personal accomplishment for participants? If yes, are we expected to provide indicator targets for all indicators or would a sampling suffice? The NOFO does ask for projected projections for all of the indicators. You may also provide monthly, quarterly projections for activities that you plan to implement. But yes, we do ask for quantitative projections for those performance indicators that are included in the funding announcement. Is there a quota regarding how many beneficiaries an agency is supposed to enroll in the first year program? No, there is not. Is the de minimis 10% also a part of the award ceiling? For example, $35,000 will automatically be de minimis. You are not automatically provided with indirect. You can request no indirect if you choose, but all funding you request, including any indirect costs, does count toward the award ceiling. How many grants will be awarded? Is there a geographic preference? I'm going to scroll down and make sure that I have that correct. Regarding the number, it is in the NOFO, but I want to make sure that I have it correct. $15 awards. There's no geographic preference stated in the NOFO. Will letters of support count toward the 80-page limit? Yes. State agencies are not allowed to apply. Correct. That is not correct. State agencies are considered public nonprofits and are eligible to apply. What does it mean that participants can only receive 12,000 over the 3 years? Is it 12,000 for the first year or 3 years? Is this amount for contractors with the education institution? That means funding. If you refer to the program guidelines, you'll see more information about what specifically is considered direct financial assistance. Essentially, it means funding that goes directly to an individual rather than being used for overall purposes of training. On page 8, the announcement mentions that recipients will not provide typical employment-related services funded by ORR and other service providers. What are typical employment-related services? I'm not able to provide any further clarification on that other than what's found in the NOFO. Are the $12,000 per participant costs part of the organization's proposed budget? Yes. Is there a sample grant we can access to view? No, there's not. There is a substantial list of required indicators. Is the expectation we will also provide custom indicators? Are we expected to provide indicator targets for all indicators, or would a sampling suffice? The NOFO does ask for you to provide targets for all indicators. There's no restriction on providing additional indicators if you choose. Can we carry over clients from the current RCP grant to the new RCP grant? Will all clients need to be closed? I'm not going to address that question because that's about a current RCP program. You would have to direct those questions to ORR in a different context. In the expected outcomes, it states that if research is part of the proposed work, to my understanding, there is a possibility of conducting a research as part of the work for the first work period, then conducting a training. Is that correct? I'm really not able to fully address that. You would have to carefully review the funding announcement and use your best judgment. Regarding the required flexibility to ensure service to all participants working non-traditional or full-time hours can participate, are we expected to provide specific details about training providers, training schedules? Please refer to the NOFO, and if you see a requirement for something specific, then please provide it. If you don't see that a specific piece of information is required, then it is not required, but you're free to use your best judgment about what will best provide evidence of your program's ability to meet the criteria. Is food an allowable cost when providing workshops to participants? Food is generally allowable as an expense. So if reasonable, the NOFO doesn't specifically restrict food as an allowable cost. Can we use a lump sum of money for a client in 1 year, 12,000 in year 1 instead of 4,000 each year? The NOFO does not state that it must be $4,000 per year. Given the initial budget period is 1 year, should the timeline included in the narrative also be for 1 year or the full 3-year period? I'll have to refer to the exact language in the NOFO. It says under project timeline and milestones in part 3, it does say cover the full period of performance in your timeline. The full period of performance would include the full 3-year period. The required partnership with an educational institution and partnership with vocational schools, 2 separate partnerships. The required partnership is with an educational institution, but you are free to propose other partnerships as part of your application, though those additional partnerships are not required. Do we have any other questions? I'll pause for a moment to see if others come in. Do participants need to be eligible for ORR services over the entire course of their participation in the program? If an individual became ineligible for ORR services, you would not be allowed to serve them any further. Is there an age limitation for participants? No. Program like teaching someone to drive, is that considered close to workforce pathway? I can't address that based on the information in the NOFO. Are client incentives allowed in client cost? You would have to refer the NOFO you'd have to refer to the information in the NOFO. There's no specific funding restriction on that. Would an email with the state refugee coordinator confirming the details listed under the requirement serve as sufficient documentation? I can't confirm how that would be evaluated by the reviewer. So please refer specifically to the criteria, and if you and submit something that meets those criteria. Do project directors need to be American citizens? There's no requirement in the NOFO that they do. Is participant data expected to be entered on a state or ORR database? Specific instructions for reporting would be sent to you post-award. You can see some information about how reporting currently works in the program guidelines. Regarding the $12,000 per participant, does this include tuition paid directly to institution on behalf of the student? So you can refer to the program guidelines, but funding specifically made on behalf of a specific participant counts towards this limit. I'll pause again to see if we have more questions. If we have already received multiple ORR awards, will this reduce our chances of being considered for this grant? There is no information in the NOFO indicating that receiving grants is factored into evaluation. Can refugee participants be humanitarian parolees, SIVs awaiting asylum approval? If you refer to the eligible participants section, certain humanitarian parolees are ORR eligible, and this may change from time to time based on legislation. So you would need to refer to the funding announcement. Special immigrant visa holders are also included in this list. Those awaiting asylum approval are not specifically included on this list, but somebody who is awaiting asylum approval may potentially have an ORR status. There is reference to an American Job Centers as a required partner or support letter required. There is no requirement in the NOFO regarding American Job Centers. Are past recipients' experience considered in the application review? There's no prohibition on mentioning past experience, but there's no specific criteria that states that scoring would be directly impacted by past receipt of award. Can the fund be spent on training the project staff as well? There is no funding restriction on training. Data to collecting participants' eligibility, such as refugees, is there a right way of storing the data? There is a note, there is information in the funding announcement regarding um, creating systems um, for collecting data and for securing it. So I'd refer you to that. What is the success rate for second year applicants? I'm not able to provide that information in this forum. How do the programs receive recipients? Is it through referrals? That varies, and you would have to describe in your application how you would conduct outreach. Do participants have to be in a specific location, or they can be from different cities and states? You can propose your service area in your application. Is there a funding restriction on purchasing laptops for participants? No, there is no funding restriction on that. I'll pause to see if we have more questions come in. Is there any restriction on a program just being implemented after receiving state approval? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Should there be a curriculum for the training already developed prior to the funding start date, or the funding could be used on developing training curriculum? You'd have to carefully review the requirements of the funding announcement. There's no way to quickly answer that. Do we submit curricula that have been developed? There's no requirement that you do, and there's no prohibition on doing that if you choose. Would the applicant design a driving program for refugees? This is important because Afghan women refugees face challenges with driving. You'd have to carefully review the scope of the activities and use your judgment in the activities that you propose. Can the funding be used for a limited number of participants in year one and building to more participants in year two and three? Um, I don't quite understand the question. There's no requirement that you only enroll participants in the first year. We have multiple offices. Should we submit one application or separate applications for different offices? Please refer to the eligibility section. And if you don't see a prohibition on applying in a certain way, then you're free to go ahead and do it. Are organizations expected to collect and store every purchase receipts for the program? What does funding reporting look like? Please refer to the funding guidelines that are linked to in the applications. They have details on that. Can we hire external consultants through the funding? There is no funding restriction on that. Are partners required to be voluntary partners, or can the MOU include monetary compensation? You can. The NOFO does include information on subgrants and contracts, so you are able to propose those as part of your application. Do potential participants have to show a copy of their parole to be eligible for the program? Please review the program guidelines. It has information about the documentation that needs to be reviewed before enrolling a participant. How many applications have been submitted in the past? What is the acceptance rate? I'm not able to share that information. Is there a match requirement? No. How many MOUs are required? No MOUs are required. There one letter of support from a required partner is required. Is there a sense of how many new and returning grantees you will have? No. Pausing to see if there are any more questions. Is there a chance to appeal the proposal score? You would have to refer to that section of the NOFO, the last section about award, to see what happens if you receive notification that you are not awarded. Can the program be in the language of the refugees? There is information throughout the application that talks about making the program activities accessible to all refugees, including those with limited English language skills. Is there a proposal evaluation matrix? There is a criteria section in the NOFO that states the points that are awarded to each aspect. Will a transcript of the webinar be posted with the recording? I believe so. My understanding is there would either be a transcript or captioning available. Pausing to see if there are any more questions. Can you clarify, is the limitation on one career field only limited to the education institution, or if there's more than one partner, can the project emphasis be on one field? You would have to carefully review the information in the NOFO. If the application is not accepted, can we request an application or score feedback? Every applicant where the application is accepted for review will receive the panel summary report, where you will see your score along with the comments submitted by reviewers. You won't have to request that. You will receive it from ORR, whether you are successful or not. Is location a factor? That's a very general question. There's no specific information in the NOFO stating that certain locations are preferred, but I can't say location is not a factor at all. Travel mileage or cost to participants, can there be payment to support with participants' travel costs? Travel is not, there's no funding restriction on travel, so you would have to you'd have to propose something in line with program requirements and scope. Does OR have data on refugees' employment status or any public data that could be found? I'm not able to address that because that's not within the scope of the NOFO. Can you explain the direct financial assistance on page 15? Not in addition to what's already in the NOFO. You'd have to review that and the program guidelines. Pausing to see if we have any more questions. Would driver's education for refugees be an allowable expense? There's no funding restriction on that. You'd have to review the allowable activities section and the scope. It says each participant can receive 12,000 in direct financial assistance over the 3-year period. Is that additional funding? If you mean, does that count towards your budget ceiling? It does. Any funding you propose for anything, including direct financial assistance, counts towards the budget ceiling. If a participant relocates outside the defined area after they begin to have to de-enroll them, that would be a question that would have to be discussed on a case-by-case basis if you were to be awarded. There's no information in the NOFO or the guidelines that specifically addresses that. Will the size of an educational institution play a factor? I can't speculate on how a reviewer would evaluate that information. Is it by invoice? I don't understand that question. If awarded the first round, what are the chances of receiving future funding? Does the amount decrease also? Again, the second and third year funding are dependent on ORR's funding availability. So the intention would be to fund for second and third years, but I could not guess at the chances of the award happening or not. Do the awards get paid in lump sum or do we invoice for? Oh, okay. They are not paid out in lump sum. The awards are done through funding request. I'm not able to get too much into that because it's not within the scope of the NOFO and also not my area of expertise. Should the proposal be formatted with headings based on step 3? Use headings and order of the sections that follow or the criteria layout. Criteria does not match exactly the step 3. You'll have to use your best judgment according to the what's in the NOFO. Do letters of support play a major factor? Again, I can't speculate. You can look at the weights and points given to various aspects of the application in the criteria section. Can ORR provide examples of current RCP projects, or is this the first time? It's not the first time. You can see a list of current recipients on ORR's website. There are current programs that have been funded. So we don't provide public information on specifically what each program is doing, but you can see a list of current recipients. May we contact Ryan if there are questions about the application? Yes, you can. Similar to this discussion, my answers would have to be limited to the information that's in the NOFO, but you are free to reach out to me. Is this application just for general RCP programs or also for the Afghan specific RCP programs? So that question refers to a past funding announcement that went out from ORR that funded programs that were limited to serving certain Afghan nationals. That is not the case with this program. As you can see from the participants section, this program is open to all individuals who are eligible for ORR services. All right, I'll wait a moment longer to see if there's any additional questions. The NOFO has multiple methods for indirect costs. Can you talk a little more about this? No, not really. I wouldn't be able to provide any information in addition to what's in the NOFO. I'll wait just a moment longer to see if there's any more questions. Related to my last question, is the Afghan specific grant going to be available for the upcoming cycle as well, or is the slots for RCP grantees now decreased by half? So ORR funding is dependent on ORR's funding that we receive as well as the priorities of the ORR director. So it's not necessarily the case that slots are decreased, and just that this is the funding opportunity that has been published, and any further funding opportunities would appear on grants.gov. And if it doesn't appear there, then it wouldn't be something that I could discuss. If you joined at 2:30, then you missed everything that was before 2:30, but the full recording will appear on our website. I'm not sure exactly how long it will take, but it will appear on ORR's website. And information about where it will appear is in the NOFO. Are there other opportunity to collaborate with ORR? Examples, some organization connect with an agency and provides their participants about that agency's, I'm sorry, I just don't, I can't understand that question. You'd have to clarify it. When referring to services to refugee women, is there a definition provided by ORR? No, not beyond that. Should expected outcomes reflect what is listed on page 15 under data reporting requirements? I'd have to see what is on page 15 about that. So that is a list of the data indicators. Will questions asked afterwards regarding this RFP be made available to the public? No. But again, those questions and answers would not reflect anything that can't already be found in the funding announcement. This is the only publicly available opportunity to ask questions. Are there any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to confirm any ORR eligible, any individual eligible for ORR can be served by these funds. It's not just for the Afghan refugees, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
At the end of this session, will you share the link to the recording here too? The link is in the NOFO. Again, it won't be immediately available. All right, not seeing any further questions, we will conclude this webinar. I hope that you find it useful. And as I mentioned, the recording of the presentation will be available on ORR's website. I'm not exactly certain how long it will take for that to be available, but the link to where you can eventually find it is available on our website. So thank you very much for joining, and best of luck with the application process.